I remember the night as if it were etched into my skin forever. It was the night they celebrated my fall. I walked into that room with a forced smile, pretending everything was fine. I had just lost the job I had poured my heart into for years, the one I thought defined me. I thought they cared. I thought they would understand. But as I stepped in, glasses raised and laughter echoing around me, I realized how wrong I had been. Every cheer, every pat on the back, every congratulatory word was not for me, but for the destruction they believed they had caused. I felt it deep in my chest, a hollow ache I had never known before. And yet, I didn't run. I stayed, pretending to be okay while my mind screamed in silent fury. I went home that night alone, the streets quiet, the city lights mocking me. My phone buzzed constantly, snippets of gossip and cruel jokes about my failure. She's done for one message read. No one can come back from this. I stared at the ceiling, thinking maybe they were right. Maybe this was the end of me. Then my phone flashed, a tiny notification blinking at the corner of the screen, an anonymous message that said, "Midnight will change everything." I laughed, bitter and hollow. Who sends messages like that? Who even cares? But I couldn't ignore it. Deep down, something stirred a spark of curiosity, a flicker of hope I hadn't felt in weeks. Midnight. I didn't know it yet, but it was going to be the moment everything changed. The next day, I woke to a world that felt stranger than I remembered. My friends, the ones I had trusted, seemed distant, careful with their words, watching me as if I were fragile porcelain. Emily, my closest confidant, avoided my gaze entirely. I noticed little things that had never mattered before, a smirk that lingered too long, whispers cut short when I entered the room, messages left unopened. I tried to dismiss it as paranoia, but the truth was unavoidable. They didn't want me to rise again. Every promotion I had been denied, every project quietly reassigned, every rumor whispered behind closed doors. Nothing had been an accident. They had planned it all. I had been surrounded by enemies wearing the masks of friends, and I hadn't seen it until now. As the clock crept closer to midnight, I couldn't sit still. I kept checking my phone as if the answer would appear in the glow of the screen. Then the message came again. "It's time." Watch closely. I considered ignoring it, deleting it, pretending I hadn't seen it, but something deep inside me refused. I had to know. I opened every file I could find, emails, hidden documents, messages I hadn't read before. And then I saw it. The truth laid bare before me. Every secret plan, every hidden meeting, every backstab carefully orchestrated to destroy me was revealed. Their names, their dates, their actions all traced in evidence I could no longer ignore. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel lost. I felt unstoppable. Midnight had arrived, and with it, my clarity. I couldn't sleep that night. I spent hours jotting down names, dates, conversations, every detail I could remember, every tiny clue that had once seemed meaningless. Slowly, the puzzle came together, and the full picture of their betrayal became horrifyingly clear. They had assumed I was weak, defeated, fragile. They had celebrated my fall without realizing that the spark they thought they had extinguished was only growing brighter. I began small, testing their reactions, dropping hints carefully to see how they would respond. Watching them squirm beneath their own arrogance, I felt a surge of determination. They didn't know that while they were destroying me, I was quietly rebuilding, planning, and waiting for the right moment to strike back. Then it began. One by one, their true colors emerged. Emily, my so-called confidant, revealed herself in ways I had suspected but never imagined in full. She had laughed at my failures, shared my secrets, and played her part in every hidden plot. I confronted her privately, masking my fury beneath a calm exterior. She laughed at me, believing I was naive, thinking I would forgive. But I couldn't forgive. Not anymore. Not after the months of whispers, lies, and manipulations. Each betrayal, each secret plot revealed in the files I had uncovered fueled a clarity I hadn't known I possessed. Pain became strategy. Anger became focus. Every tear I had shed, every sleepless night, became fuel for the plan I had been quietly crafting. It was subtle at first. I planted small doubts, hints, suggestions, letting them unravel slowly. I observed every reaction, noting the slightest hesitation, every flicker of guilt or fear. They hadn't realized that while they were busy tearing me down, I was carefully constructing a web of exposure. And then it happened, a presentation I was required to attend, the moment I had been waiting for. I walked into that room, heart steady, mind sharp, carrying the calm of someone who knows the truth and is ready to wield it. The room was full of faces that had once been familiar, once trusted, all now smug with the arrogance of assumed victory. I let them believe it for a moment, letting the weight of their arrogance settle into the room. Then I began to speak, slowly, deliberately. I revealed emails, messages, recordings, and documents that they had assumed I would never find. Names, dates, details, they were all there, impossible to deny. At first, they laughed, thinking I had lost my mind. But as I presented each piece of evidence, their laughter died, replaced by discomfort, confusion, and then panic. Their carefully built lies collapsed before my eyes. They weren't just caught off guard, they were exposed, humiliated, and powerless. Watching them unravel, I felt a thrill I hadn't expected. The fear that had once belonged to me had shifted to them. Every plan, every manipulation they had set in motion now turned against them, and I was the architect of their downfall. I realized that justice was more satisfying when served not through rage, but through precision. Their arrogance had been their weakness, and my patience had been my strength. By the time the meeting ended, they weren't merely defeated, they were left speechless, incapable of defending themselves against the evidence I had collected. But even then, the night wasn't over. Midnight approached again, the symbolic hour of reckoning. I had spent weeks preparing for this, watching, waiting, understanding the rhythm of their deceit, knowing exactly when and how to deliver the final blow. And as the clock ticked closer to 12, the tension in the air became almost tangible. I stood in my apartment, watching the hands move, remembering the words that had started it all. Midnight will change everything. They had laughed when they thought it was a joke. They hadn't known that for me, midnight had always been the turning point. The moment when I would reclaim control, when I would no longer be a shadow in their lives. But the force that changed everything, I opened my laptop one last time, sending messages, documents, and evidence to every corner of the company, to contacts who had been deceived, to people whose trust had been manipulated. And then I waited, watching as the truth began to spread like wildfire. Panic, confusion, desperation, they were everywhere. And through it all, I felt a sense of release, a relief so deep I could hardly breathe. I had been broken, yes, but I had rebuilt myself stronger, sharper, more aware. The fall they had celebrated had been only the first act of the story, the part that made my rise even sweeter, more inevitable, and as the clock struck 12, I sat back, exhausted but triumphant. The people who had plotted my destruction were exposed, humiliated, and powerless. I had not only survived, I had grown, adapted, and emerged stronger. The lesson was clear: never underestimate those you tried to destroy, for their pain can become the very source of their power. I had learned that trust is fragile, betrayal is cruel, but patience, strategy, and belief in oneself can turn the darkest night into the dawn of victory. The aftermath of midnight was surreal. I sat alone in my apartment, the glow of my laptop screen casting shadows across my walls, and I watched as the world I had once known collapsed before my eyes. Every message I had sent, every document I had released, spread faster than I could have imagined. Reactions poured in shock, disbelief, panic, and I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and exhaustion. It was strange, the power of truth. It had always been silent, patient, waiting for the right moment. And now, it roared like a storm no one could stop. I thought back to the first moments I had felt the sting of betrayal, the first whispers, the first secret smiles exchanged behind my back. At the time, it had seemed like the world had ended. I had felt small, insignificant, powerless. I had questioned myself constantly, wondering if I had been blind, naive, foolish. But all of that had been part of the lesson, part of the preparation I didn't even know I was receiving. Every humiliation, every tear, every sleepless night had been shaping me, sharpening me into something more than I had ever imagined. The following days were a blur of reactions. Emily tried to explain herself, but her words stumbled out like fragile glass, easily broken. The others avoided me, pretending not to notice the storm they had triggered. And yet, despite the chaos, I found a strange calm within myself. I no longer felt the fear, the anxiety, the need to please. For the first time, I felt fully, undeniably free. The world had shifted beneath my feet, and I had learned to stand firm on the ground I had reclaimed. I started noticing subtle shifts in behavior. Colleagues who had once ignored me approached cautiously, their words carefully chosen. Friends who had laughed at my failures now tried to appease me, their smiles tentative, uncertain. It was a strange feeling, being both feared and respected, knowing that the very people who had tried to destroy me now had to navigate carefully around me. And I couldn't help but marvel at the irony. All this power, all this respect had not come from cruelty, but from truth, patience, and unwavering determination. But it wasn't enough to simply watch them squirm. I had learned early on that true justice required more than exposure. It required understanding, strategy, and timing. I began to observe again, carefully, noting patterns, habits, weaknesses. Every conversation I overheard, every casual glance, every subtle slip of the tongue became a clue. I mapped it all in my mind, connecting the dots with precision. They had underestimated me from the start, and that mistake would be their undoing in ways they couldn't yet imagine. One evening, I found myself walking through the city streets, the cool night air brushing against my skin, and I reflected on everything that had happened. I remembered my first moment of despair, the crushing weight of loss, the sting of betrayal. I remembered the message at midnight that had sparked a change, the files I had discovered, the careful planning, and the eventual exposure. And I realized something profound. The world doesn't hand out justice, and it doesn't reward the innocent. It rewards those who are willing to act, who are willing to endure pain, and who are willing to wait for the perfect moment to strike. I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile. I had become someone I didn't recognize at first, someone stronger, more patient, more aware. And yet, beneath all of it, I was still me. The core of who I had always been, the part that cared deeply, that loved fully, that hoped against hope remained intact. What had changed was the armor I had built around it, the clarity I now possessed, and the knowledge that I could never be taken for granted again. The following weeks were a delicate dance. I navigated meetings and conversations with newfound confidence, careful not to reveal the full depth of my awareness. I allowed them to underestimate me once more, playing the long game, letting their arrogance guide them into missteps. I watched as cracks formed in their alliances, as mistrust seeped into their interactions, as the very people who had plotted against me began to falter under the weight of their own deceit. It was mesmerizing, the way truth could slowly dismantle even the most confident of facades. I began to rebuild my life, cautiously at first, testing the waters. Opportunities I had thought lost forever returned, and I approached them with a careful, deliberate mindset. Every choice, every step forward, was informed by the lessons of betrayal. I no longer rushed. I no longer trusted blindly. I moved like someone who had seen the darkest parts of the world and had emerged stronger for it. And with every success, no matter how small, I felt a sense of vindication, a quiet satisfaction that was impossible to diminish. And yet, despite all the triumphs, there were moments of reflection, moments when the weight of everything I had endured pressed down on me. I thought about Emily, about the others, about the people who had once meant so much and had now become cautionary tales. I didn't feel hatred as I might have expected. Instead, I felt understanding, a deep awareness that their actions had shaped me as much as my own choices had. They had forced me to confront my vulnerabilities, to embrace my strength, and to realize the depth of my own resilience. It was during one particularly quiet evening that I realized the full extent of the transformation. I was sitting alone, watching the city lights twinkle, reflecting on everything that had occurred, and I felt a profound sense of peace. The storm of betrayal had passed, and what remained was clarity. I knew who I was, what I was capable of, and the lessons I would carry forward. And I knew that midnight, the symbolic turning point, had been more than just a moment of revelation. It had been the catalyst for my rebirth. As I moved forward, I encountered opportunities to help others, to offer guidance, to share my experiences in subtle ways. I began to recognize patterns of deceit in other environments, warning signs that I had once missed. And in doing so, I realized that my journey wasn't just about revenge. It was about growth, awareness, and the power of patience. Every betrayal, every obstacle had prepared me to face the world with eyes wide open, to navigate challenges with intelligence and strategy, and to never allow myself to be underestimated again. There were times when I still thought of them, the ones who had celebrated my fall. I imagined the expressions on their faces as they realized they had misjudged me, as they understood that their attempts to destroy me had only made me stronger. And I smiled, not out of cruelty, but out of recognition of the truth. Life has a way of balancing itself, and those who act without considering the consequences often find themselves at the mercy of their own mistakes. In the months that followed, I continued to grow, both personally and professionally. I rebuilt relationships that were genuine, nurtured connections that were meaningful, and learned to recognize authenticity in others. I approached every situation with a combination of caution and confidence, aware of the lessons I had learned, but also open to the possibilities of the future. And through it all, I carried with me the knowledge that resilience, patience, and clarity are far more powerful than vengeance alone. Even now, when I think back to that night, the celebration of my fall, the whispers of betrayal, the lonely hours of doubt and despair, I am reminded of the strength that lies within. I am reminded that every setback, every pain, every betrayal is not the end, but an opportunity to rise, to strategize, and to reclaim control over one's destiny. And I know, without a shadow of a doubt, that the power of truth, combined with the patience to wait for the perfect moment, can change everything. I remember the first time I truly realized how far I had come. It was a quiet morning, the kind of stillness that makes the world feel endless, when I looked in the mirror and didn't see the scared, exhausted version of myself from months ago. I saw someone who had endured betrayal, humiliation, and fear, and had come out stronger. My eyes held a clarity they had never held before. I realized in that moment that the power they had tried to strip from me was never truly theirs to take. It had always belonged to me, waiting for me to claim it. The following days were a delicate game of observation and timing. I didn't rush. I didn't act recklessly. I had learned the hard way that haste invites mistakes. I moved silently, strategically, watching the people around me. Every interaction, every glance, every casual comment became a piece of information. I began to anticipate their moves before they even made them, to predict the cracks in their alliances, and to subtly influence outcomes without revealing my awareness. It was intoxicating, the knowledge that while they believed I was still fragile, I was quietly in control. Emily's betrayal had been the hardest to endure. She had been my confidant, my support, someone I had trusted above all others. Yet she had turned against me without hesitation. And still, I found that I didn't want revenge out of malice. I wanted justice, exposure, and acknowledgement of the truth. I had learned that revenge born from anger is fleeting, but revenge born from patience, strategy, and precision lasts. I allowed her attempts to apologize and rationalize to fade into nothing because I no longer needed her approval or forgiveness. I had learned that closure is not granted by others, it is claimed by oneself. There were moments, late at night, when the memories of the betrayal resurfaced. The laughter, the whispers, the carefully hidden smiles, all of it had once seemed harmless. But I had come to see the patterns, to recognize the subtle signals, the small manipulations that had built a web around me. And as I reflected on all of it, I realized that the pain I had endured had been my teacher. It had forced me to grow, to develop patience, clarity, and insight. I had learned to trust my instincts, to recognize deception, and to understand the motives of others with unparalleled precision. It was during one particularly tense meeting that I realized the true power of my transformation. They had assumed I would falter, that I would crumble under pressure, that I would accept defeat silently. But I didn't. I presented ideas with confidence, addressed concerns with calm authority, and subtly exposed inconsistencies in their plans without revealing the full depth of my awareness. I watched as hesitation and doubt began to spread among them. The arrogance that had once fueled their betrayal now became their weakness. And I smiled quietly, knowing that the long game I had been playing was beginning to pay off. As the weeks passed, I became increasingly aware of the subtle ways in which I had grown stronger. I could read expressions, tone of voice, and body language with a precision I had never known. I could anticipate moves and reactions, and I could manipulate outcomes with a careful blend of observation, patience, and strategic influence. I wasn't seeking to humiliate them again. My goal had always been clarity, truth, and reclaiming my rightful position in a world that had tried to erase me. And yet, I couldn't deny the satisfaction I felt as I watched their subtle panic grow. It wasn't just about work, either. My personal life had been deeply affected by the betrayals, and I took care to rebuild it slowly, deliberately. I sought relationships and connections that were genuine, people who respected and valued honesty and integrity. I surrounded myself with individuals who nurtured growth, who celebrated success without envy, and who understood the fragility of trust. And in doing so, I began to understand the true meaning of resilience, not just enduring hardship, but emerging from it with renewed clarity, strength, and purpose. Then came the moment I had been waiting for, the final confrontation. I had collected every piece of evidence, every document, every communication that proved their deceit, their lies, and their manipulation. I knew that when I revealed it, the impact would be irreversible. And so I chose my timing carefully, ensuring that the moment would be public, undeniable, and complete. I wanted them to see that their actions, their arrogance, and their betrayal had consequences that they could not escape. I remember walking into the room that day, the weight of anticipation balanced by the calm of preparation. They were confident, smiling as though victory was theirs, unaware of the storm about to unfold. I let them bask in their false sense of security for a moment, allowing the tension to build. And then I began. Slowly, deliberately, I presented the evidence, step by step, connecting the dots, showing every lie, every secret plan, every act of deceit. At first, they tried to laugh it off, to dismiss it, to deflect. But as the truth became undeniable, their confidence crumbled. The faces I had once trusted twisted with shock, fear, and the dawning realization that they had misjudged me completely. It was mesmerizing. The way the power of truth could dismantle years of deception. Every piece of evidence I revealed was like a hammer striking a fragile structure. One by one, the cracks widened until the foundation itself collapsed. And through it all, I felt a sense of calm, of satisfaction, of vindication. This wasn't about cruelty, it was about justice, about reclaiming what had been taken, about ensuring that the truth could not be ignored. After the confrontation, I watched as they struggled to regain composure, trying to explain, rationalize, and deny what had been laid bare. But the damage was done. The web of deception they had woven was exposed, and they could no longer hide behind arrogance or falsehood. I felt a strange sense of peace as I realized that I had not only survived, but I had grown stronger, wiser, and more aware. The fear that had once belonged to me had shifted to them, and in that reversal, I found a quiet, enduring satisfaction. The weeks following the confrontation were a time of reflection and growth. I rebuilt my life with care, reestablishing professional and personal connections with integrity, clarity, and awareness. I approached every situation with a blend of caution and confidence, aware of the lessons I had learned, but also open to the possibilities of the future. And I realized that the true measure of strength is not in retaliation, but in the ability to endure, to observe, and to act with precision when the moment is right. There were moments when I still thought of the people who had betrayed me, moments when I imagined their faces as they came to terms with their mistakes. I didn't feel hatred. I felt understanding. I recognized that their actions, though cruel, had been a catalyst for my growth. They had forced me to confront my vulnerabilities, to embrace my strength, and to discover the depths of my own resilience. And in that understanding, I found closure, not in their remorse, but in my own clarity and empowerment, and so I moved forward, carrying the lessons with me. I became someone I hadn't known I could be: patient, observant, strong, and unshakable. I had learned that betrayal is painful, but it can also be illuminating. It can reveal weaknesses, expose truths, and force transformation. I had learned that patience, strategy, and awareness are far more powerful than immediate revenge. And I had learned that the true power of an individual lies not in avoiding pain, but in enduring it and using it to grow stronger, even now, when I reflect on the events. I am struck by the journey I have undertaken. I went from despair to determination, from betrayal to clarity, and from humiliation to empowerment. Midnight had been the turning point, the symbolic moment when the world shifted beneath my feet. It had been the moment when I realized that the power I had thought was lost had always been mine to claim. And in that realization, I discovered the true meaning of resilience, the strength of patience, and the enduring power of truth, asterisked by the time the final days arrived. I had grown so accustomed to my own strength that it almost felt natural. I no longer flinched at betrayal or whispered lies. I had learned to anticipate deceit before it occurred, to see through smiles that masked hidden agendas, and to walk through life with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced darkness and emerged. Strong are the people who had tried to destroy me were now shadows in my periphery, their power diminished, their arrogance shattered. And yet, I did not gloat. I had learned that true strength is quiet, steady, and aware. One afternoon, I found myself in a room I had once dreaded, facing the very people who had orchestrated my downfall. They looked at me now with a mixture of fear and disbelief. They had expected someone timid, broken, desperate for approval. Instead, I was calm, precise, in full control of both my words and the narrative. I let the silence stretch, watching them fidget, waiting for them to realize the shift that had occurred. And then I spoke clearly and deliberately, recounting each act of betrayal, every manipulation, every hidden plan. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. My calm certainty was enough. As I revealed the evidence, I noticed subtle changes in their demeanor. The smirks faded, the laughter died, and their faces became pale. They tried to rationalize, to justify, but the truth was undeniable. The documents, messages, and recordings left no room for excuses. For the first time, they understood that they were powerless in the face of the clarity and resolve I had developed. And it was not cruel. It was justice delivered with precision, a balance restored without chaos or malice. I watched as they struggled to respond, as their carefully constructed world unraveled. Every secret, every plan, every deception they had relied on was laid bare, and there was no one to protect them from the consequences. I had learned long ago that exposing the truth was more powerful than any outburst of anger. I had learned that patience and strategy allow the scales to tip naturally, and as I observed the final cracks forming, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction, tempered by the awareness of the lessons I had learned along the way. But my journey wasn't only about revenge or exposure. It was about transformation. I had been forced to confront the deepest vulnerabilities within myself: the fear of inadequacy, the sting of betrayal, the isolation of losing those I thought I could trust. And in confronting these challenges, I discovered resilience I didn't know I possessed. I realized that every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of despair had been preparing me for the clarity I now possessed. As the weeks passed, I focused on rebuilding my life completely. I surrounded myself with people who were authentic, who valued integrity, and who encouraged growth rather than envy. I pursued opportunities with careful deliberation, knowing exactly what I wanted and refusing to settle for less. And I noticed something remarkable. As I grew stronger, my presence alone began to command respect. I no longer needed to assert power aggressively. It radiated naturally, born of the confidence that comes from surviving and thriving despite betrayal. There were moments when the memory of Emily and the others who had turned against me resurfaced. At first, I had felt anger, a desire for retaliation, but over time, that anger softened into understanding. I realized that their actions, though cruel, had been catalysts for my growth. They had forced me to develop awareness, patience, and resilience. In a strange way, I was grateful for the hardships they had created, because they had led me to a version of myself I would never have discovered otherwise. Eventually, I found that I no longer needed to think about revenge. The exposure had been sufficient, the consequences unavoidable. Those who had plotted against me had experienced the natural outcome of their actions, and I could move forward with my life free from the shadows of betrayal. I could build, create, and thrive without fear of manipulation or deception. It was liberating, the knowledge that the past could no longer define me. I began sharing my experiences, subtly and carefully, with others who faced similar challenges. I didn't tell the story to boast or gloat. I told it to inspire awareness, to offer guidance, to illuminate the lessons that betrayal teaches if one is willing to learn. I wanted others to understand that resilience is built through experience, that patience can turn the tide, and that clarity and strategy are more powerful than impulsive retaliation. As I walked through life, I carried the knowledge of my journey like a quiet shield. I moved confidently, aware of the intentions of those around me, but not consumed by suspicion. I had learned to trust, but cautiously, knowing that authenticity is rare and precious. I had learned to value truth above appearances, to seek integrity in myself and others, and to recognize that growth often comes from the most unexpected hardships. Looking back, I can see the arc of my transformation clearly. I went from despair to determination, from betrayal to empowerment, from silence to clarity. Midnight had been the turning point, but the journey had continued long after that symbolic hour. Each challenge, each test of patience and awareness had strengthened me, preparing me for the life I now lead. I no longer fear betrayal, for I have seen it and survived it. I no longer fear adversity, for I have endured and grown. And I no longer feel powerless, for I have discovered the depth of my own strength. Even now, I reflect on the lessons learned. Trust is fragile, yet resilience is unbreakable. Deception can wound, yet awareness heals. Patience is a weapon more precise than anger, and truth, when wielded with care and strategy, is unstoppable. I have learned that the most profound victories are often quiet, unseen by the world, internalized in the growth, clarity, and strength they foster. I smile, remembering that first night, the celebration of my fall, the whispers behind my back, the loneliness of despair, and I recognized the irony. They thought they had destroyed me. They thought they had ended my story. But in reality, they had set the stage for my transformation, my empowerment, and my ultimate triumph. And for that, I am quietly grateful. As I continue forward, I know that life will always present challenges, betrayals, and moments of doubt. But I also know that within me resides an unwavering resilience, a clarity sharpened by hardship, and a patience tempered by experience. And in that knowledge, I find peace, strength, and the enduring ability to rise no matter what the world throws my way. I am Lily. I endured betrayal, survived humiliation, and reclaimed my life. I transformed despair into strategy, weakness into strength, and deception into awareness. And I carry these lessons forward, knowing that midnight may come again for someone else. But with patience, clarity, and resilience, every fall can be the beginning of something greater. The world may try to knock us down, may try to strip away our confidence, may attempt to deceive and humiliate. But we are stronger than we imagine. And sometimes it takes the darkest night, the deepest betrayal, and the quietest patience to awaken that strength. I learned this the hard way. I lived it, and I emerged unbroken, aware, and unstoppable. Asterisk.